welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your July break. Off to the next year, off to the races again. So we need to excuse Mr. Smith until he arrives. He's supposed to be here. But if somebody can excuse.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, and if I can have a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, and Makiba is going to do the oath of office for Ms. Hudson. That's my board.
I'll get you a picture. And I'll just read off me a nice full voice.
I, Leslie Hudson, do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the constitutions and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my position as a member of the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority this the 14th day of August, 2024.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, you're official. As Dean says, welcome to the circus. I heard it. You said it too loud. All right, next we're going to have Craig and his team present the Peak Performance Awards.
Got a big team. Yeah, settle. All right, good morning. Yeah, you can kind of swing out.
Once you get hooked.
So, good morning. The National Association of Clean Water Agencies, also known as NACWA, has been the nation's recognized leader in legislation, regulatory, and legal advocacy for a full spectrum of the clean water issues, as well as a top technical resource for water management. NACWA represents public wastewater and stormwater agencies of all sizes nationwide. NACWA awarded both Northside and Southside for the Gold Peak Performance Award. The Gold Peak Performance Award is awarded to the wastewater utilities that have zero permit and regulatory violations for the year. The hard work and dedication of plant staff, laboratory, as well as our centralized maintenance is a crucial part for protecting our waters and our environment. Dedication like Dennis Hicks, 45 years in water and wastewater, and Jeff Cermak, 46 years in water and wastewater. Both started here at City of Wilmington and then transitioned over to CFPUA. It's that type of dedication and understanding how plants work that makes sure that we can actually meet our permit regulations. So I am very proud to present Northside and Southside team with this award. This one is the Northside. This one is the Southside.
How many years in a row now?
So Northside's got 3,
There you go.
and Southside's got 2.
Okay.
And that's a good point. If we make 5, we get the highest one, which is platinum.
Yeah.
So that is our goal. It's our goal always to be permit free and in violation. So I think we can make it.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Always nice to start off meetings with excellent recognition, so thank you all. And we expect to see you back next year. No pressure. All right, moving on to the approval of the minutes, Dr. Cannon.
We have our June 19th meeting minutes in the packet, and if there is no comment or questions, I'll take a motion to adopt those, approve those.
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any public comments? None, thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, there's a number of items on the consent agenda. Any comments, questions?
Madam Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Item B, I'd like to pull just for clarification, and I move to approve the rest, if you'd like to do it that way.
Okay. Let's go ahead with your question for item B.
Sure. Thanks. It's a follow-up from finance, I guess, or long-range planning, one of the two. If there's someone who can speak to, I just got it stuck in my craw about the consultant issue that's with the contract for W.K. Dixon. I just want to make sure that at some point, the engineers will show up on the job. Going back and reviewing the way that contract's written, it's a consultant who's doing all the field work. And we pay the big dollars to the engineers. I just want to make sure that it's not just the consultants who are doing that.
So when you mean consultant, you mean a concern that the engineer will have a subcontractor performing the work
On-site.
instead of their own staff? Would you please come to the
Thanks,
podium
Gary.
and speak to that topic, Gary? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. The engineer, sir, will show up on the job. In this particular instance, we had been working with that particular group of engineers and found that they have an excellent inspections group, but there is a particular consultant in the marketplace who is an inspector who was a former employee of New Hanover County Engineering Department and has gone on to be a consultant. And this particular work is a little bit of niche work. And so we collaborated with the engineering firm and actually, to some extent, requested that they assign this inspector to the work because we felt like the quality of inspection would be higher. And so it actually was a collaboration with the firm to select that to the benefit of CFPUA and our ratepayers to have a better quality of inspection than you generally would get for this type of work.
Gary, thanks for the explanation. But at this level, as I'm sure you know, what we're paying for in large part is responsibility. I just want to make sure, I'm sure the inspector's great and we got the right guy on there and that's terrific. I just want to make sure that an engineer who's responsible, whose name or is connected to this firm, is out there on the site to observe. It doesn't have to be every day. I get it. That's why we hire the consultant. I just want the guys responsible to physically show up there.
Yes, sir. The engineer of record has an obligation to do periodic inspections, both by permitting and by contract. And so there's no doubt of that. The consulting inspector is simply there to be boots on the ground to make sure that the contractor installs it correctly, and also to assist in any high-level coordination that might be necessary with a homeowner.
Gary, I think there's a little bit of a secondary agenda, I think, in my question. I know that we've run in recently up there in Porter's Neck to a situation where we had a break in a wastewater line. And when we finally got down to it, we found that it's actually below 2 stormwater drain pipes, making it incredibly difficult to get to. And to the point, and I know you know this, that we're going to have to divert around those stormwater pipes to do that. Here we have a bunch of new infrastructure that's going in. I just would like that engineer who's back doing his work every day and drawing in those lines on paper, walk out on the site and go, oh, wait a minute, maybe we move the waste line over here on the off chance that there's a problem 10 years down the line and we can get to it. It's that kind of, basic stuff that I'm hopeful. I mean, maybe that won't make any difference at all. It just would make, I think, me feel a whole lot better.
Commissioner, under the good work and tenure of Carl Vandermeiden, engineering staff developed new technical guidance, new technical specs that are, I would say, nationwide leading. And now those specifications would apply to both consulting engineers who work for development and for CFPUA. And those technical guidance would have, wherever possible, for force mains and pressure pipes be over top of storm drains. There's times when it's unavoidable, but it is clearly delineated in our technical standards.
Super. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is in regards to consent item number C.
Okay.
Looks like we had a low bid with RH Moore Company for 2.8. Oh, sorry. Low bid for RH Moore Company for 2.8 million. We ended up going with the second lowest bidder, SNL, who was, I think, a new vendor to us. Says there weren't any mathematical errors, but it was the low bid was deemed non-responsive because of the good faith efforts form was not executed or wasn't filled out properly. I was just hoping to get a little more information on that for my edification.
Councilman, I can speak to that.
Thank you.
The funding source for that was by special appropriations to New Hanover County, and it was North Carolina Reserve funds as administered by Department of Water Infrastructure. Those funds do not have a lot of the federal requirements, but one of the requirements that they do require is a good faith effort form. And so that was put into the bid package. And so by the bidder not including that in the bid package, it was deemed non-responsive. We coordinated with Eric Creedle, who's the finance director for New Hanover County, because he made the same inquiry. And we let him know that we could rebid as an option. The consequence of that would be to add approximately 2 months to the project schedule. And because all the bids were known, then the market would adjust its pricing to accommodate. And so because it was a requirement so as not to lose the funding, and because there would be impacts to both schedule and potentially to price to where it wouldn't have an advantage, the county made a determination to go with the recommendation from our council to consider it non-responsive.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
We had significant discussion on that in finance, about the legal ramifications of that, so.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Any other questions on anything in the consent agenda?
Did we approve that?
So
no.
I'm gonna
Okay.
take a motion
Thanks,
to approve, now that we've kind of gotten questions on, motion to approve all the items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion from Hollis, can I get a second? From Dean, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We'll make a note that, so the local government committee, the local government commission approved the merger last week for CFPUA and Town of Rousewood Beach. And so a few of the items on the consent agenda are our first approval things for that merger. So just kind of a historic event for us going forward. So, and Matt Tribbett will take that and run. So. Okay, that's it for the consent agenda. Moving on to administrative reports, the attorney's report? No report. Okay, great. Executive Director's report.
We have 5 items on the agenda, and then I want to give you a verbal update. So for the first 4 items, the key indicators report, the safety report, the environmental report, and the strategic plan update. Staff stands ready to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Yeah, just, again, a series of clarification questions. On the key indicators, under the, on page 77, the days billed charge outstanding. The question is, we now have the 3rd month in a row with 32.4 days. The question is, have we finally hit the sweet spot? And I guess it's more of an opinion.
I think that for a relevant statistical data suggests more than 4 data points. And, the more you get, the more
Yeah.
you have some confidence in the data. I'd caution using 3 data points. And this is something of a new metric for us. So
Yes.
we're trying to determine what is normal
Right.
as we build a record. We will watch it very closely. John, do you have any thoughts?
I think it's a great response. I mean, we've seen it kind of tick up during COVID. We've seen it change dramatically and come down since we switched from bi-monthly billing to monthly billing. I mean, I think, that certainly over the past year or so, that this number has kind of converged, down to a certain range. It is interesting that it's been the exact number, I guess to a tenth of a day for the past 3 months. But, it's based on numbers that are pulled from our general ledger and, our billing data. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a I think, pretty solid number. We give all of our customers 25 days. I think you would keep it. We give all of our customers 25 days from the bill date to pay the charges on the bill. So, having an average, days to collect any $1 that we bill of 32.4 days is great. It's great.
Well, thanks, John. I picked up on every one of the points you did too, and it's why, especially 32.4, 3 months in a row, pretty amazing. But I get what you're saying. We wait for 4. Also, there's I think a positive thing for this board in there. This is, I wouldn't say the end result, but the result of literally years of work that we put into to try and create this metric, so we can get a handle on, discontinues or shutoffs. So, thank you for all the work that went into it. I think it's pretty interesting. Second question is about residential disconnects on page 80. I was curious why we only have information or data coming through May. We're now in August. That's a kind of a long lag time. Is there a reason why we're missing June and July's data?
I'll take that information. I'll lead by apologizing. We noted just recently that there are several metrics that were not fully updated with the data that's available. And I would put that down to kind of our transition to Civic Plus and getting into the rhythm of getting that manual data, that's manual, moved over into kind of the new system. So we will provide in the weekly update, either this one or the next one, the fully updated metrics for anything that is in here that doesn't have the latest monthly data.
Thanks, Ken. Third question, turnover and vacancy rates on page 81. It just seems weird.
Leave some for the rest of us, Rob.
Oh, I'm Luke, jump in here. You know that. I'm just, I'm going to roll here.
Go, get them.
Knock me on the side of the head.
It doesn't do any good.
Yeah, no, that's true, Charlie. It's just weird. They're headed in opposite directions. It seems to be counterintuitive. Whereas before, if looking at the graph, they tend to move in sequence with each other. So it's just me trying to learn a little bit more. Is there a reason behind this or what?
I'll ask Lori McCoy, our Human Resources Director, to come up and give her thoughts.
So great question. And as a general rule, you should see those lines kind of correlate, right? So the reason that you're seeing them kind of separate right now is the result of some of the newly budgeted positions that we're recruiting for. Because we knew the budget was approved in May, we went ahead and started recruiting for some of the newer budgeted positions, knowing that they would not be filled before July 1. So it wasn't necessarily the result of turnover, so that's why you're not necessarily seeing them go together. But they will eventually line back up.
Come back. Thank you. I'll yield if you would like.
Keep going,
On page 82, under the item growth, this is our third month down, second lowest in 12 months. Do we have a trend or question?
Well, we certainly have a trend. Is it statistically relevant? We need another data point or two, but we certainly have a trend.
Part of the reason it caught my eye is that this is the month, maybe reflected in next one, when we have the UNCW move-ins, and usually we would see a little bit of an uptick in there, but indeed we see a downtick. Do I have that wrong, or?
Well, as you recall, I believe that metric, and I haven't pulled it up, I believe that metric's associated with new meter sets, is that correct? So it's rare to have those two overlap. What we're talking about is the, new meter connects relates directly to building stock and home stock. And we're seeing a decline in new home stock sales, which our conversations with the home builders suggest that we simply don't have enough stock out there right now. And there's an effort to try to bring that stock up. And there's also a reality that the loan market for home sales is pretty high compared to recent history. I would defer to some of our subject matter experts in this field who are at the table to share their thoughts on the housing market in New Hanover County.
I think we talked the other day, remember, they have a lot of apartments,
Yeah.
a lot of money in apartments and not necessarily single family.
And this number would not reflect those.
They reflect differently,
Yeah.
larger meters.
And we're still a couple of years out from seeing major upticks from the north growth. which
That's right.
Will eventually, although the D.R. Horton project, last time you were up there, it's huge. And I would think we would start to see some of that, but I guess not.
In long-range planning, at your next long-range planning committee, and then it'll come as a report to your next meeting, your engineering staff will give you an update on the economic development projects that we have to the north and south of in northern New Hanover County, in the city itself, and in southern New Hanover County. So we hope to give you an update on the progress of the various projects to support economic development.
Ken, this is a technical question, but when we have part of that D.R. Horton community up on Sidbury is about 100+ homes of single-family detached that are rental only. When that happens, who owns the meter? Would that be reflective? Does it go through the company, in this case D.R. Horton, or does it, the individual homeowner have to pick up the meter?
I don't know if we have a specific answer to that detailed question. Yeah. I believe that our normal process would be individual detached home on individual lot would require an individual meter that we would own. Yeah. If it is on a common lot, we typically require master meters. I'm not aware of us recently approving any hydrants, and I'm seeing thumbs up, so we're going to end up owning meters to single-family lots and homes.
Can I?
Luke, yeah, please.
So on a multifamily, let's say you have a 150, 200 unit multifamily project come online, that's not going to be reflected as 200 meters in this report.
No, it wouldn't. It'd be a single meter sized for that, and what we've noticed that, we might have a rental property that could house 100 residents. It might be served by a 3 or 4 inch meter versus 100 5/8. There's a significant difference there in terms of the impact on that report, and a possible difference in the fees that are associated with it. We scale those fees, but that is a best approximation scale.
So this may not be a real indicator of the growth we're seeing in the region.
Right.
It may not. What we could do is we could task staff to look at the combination of multifamily housing, commercial, and single-family housing, and look at this metric and see if there is something that they can tease out from the data we have not shared with you. And we can bring that forward at your next meeting or at a weekly update, and I'll task staff to do that. We've just done that.
Impact fees is gonna be the same on a single-family rental as far as a single-family.
Right, so when we see the drop in impact fees,
You pay your impact fees, the impact fees is gonna be different for apartment building than 100 units in apartments and 100 units single-family. Probably the big revenue is on an apartment complex, you're probably not gonna get the same amount of irrigation revenue as we get in 100.
sure.
So I mean, it's, and then at the same time, you know, kind of like Brunswick County, the neighborhoods that have been developed are they're on the waning side, and there's not a lot of new development right now. I mean, yes, D.R. Horton, but name me where I would go build in New Hanover County. It's not that many.
So you think it is an indicator, you think it is an indicator of lagging growth?
I think the amount that we're spending $100 million to put that sewer line, you know, growth is gonna follow it, but we're in the infrastructure. You know how long it takes, I mean, they haven't even developed a neighborhood yet that they're gonna hook to these lines that are sitting above ground on 133. So you're looking three years minimum.
Deans, if I heard you right, again, back to the Sidbury Road, D.R. Horton. If we have 100 homes that are built to rent, do we have 100 5/8 meters going up there, or are they, daisy chaining them all together?
I would say that would just be a massive cluster. I mean, they're gonna all be single family, because you don't want whoever rents it to be responsible. That it would come out.
I would think so, but this whole, concept of building a house to rent specifically is kind of a new
I
thing.
don't know, because you're gonna have to understand, it's a fad now. But
Yeah.
say, say I developed that neighborhood myself, and it had 100 homes in it, it's not only gonna be single meters, everybody's gonna pay impact fees when they build a house. And as a developer, I don't particularly care what happens once I turn it over to the HOA. I do, but I don't. But at 100, if you own and I've talked to this with my old partners that do property management, you own that neighborhood. And are you gonna want them to pull, if that house isn't rented, are you gonna want them to pull that meter, and you have that yard sitting there vacant with no irrigation? I mean, I don't even know how they do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a maintenance.
Means I agree. I'm just curious about that whole model and how that's gonna pan out.
Sell it to a REIT, but it'll take with a 10-foot pole.
Wes,
And-
did you have something?
Well, I feel like I've said this for months, but I do believe it's a factor in the equation there's not as many, the whole New Frontier project, Final Frontier project is gonna provide it. But right now, there's just limited development opportunities. And what I've seen over this last year is with the staffing issues at DEQ and throughout all the regulatory environment, it is taking longer to get started. And I still think that the projects have gotten bigger, and the time it takes to get them going is getting longer. And I think that's just kind of like a snowball. Like, from what I'm seeing, I think there's going to be times where we're going to see a lot of houses going on the ground, and then we're going to see times where there's not any. So I think it's just everything's changing, everything's getting bigger and taking longer. So I think that's a factor as well.
So let's have staff see how they can massage that data point and how we present it to maybe get a better picture of not only the small meters, but the larger. And we'll get back either in a weekly update or the next quarter.
That's exactly what we'll do.
Great, thank you. I have a final question. Southside wastewater, flows, excuse me. Page 87, the peak day was 11.45 million gallons per day, and that's about well over 4 million gallons a day over the norm. What happened?
I'll ask Craig. Craig, if you'll come forward and offer his thoughts on that.
Great.
Craig Wilson.
So as you saw with this last storm, we do have I&I in that basin.
Yep.
This directly correlates to a rainstorm,
Mhm.
which our normal average daily in Southside is right around the 7 to 8.
Yeah.
It kind of fluctuates there. But if we do see a heavy rainstorm, the big basins that lead to it, Mott's and Bernard's, we do see that uptick. So when we had Debbie,
microphone, please.
yeah. So when we had Debbie come through, our normal average daily was about 7 to almost 8. That rainfall that just hit us, we jumped up to 22 MGD. So there is some I&I that is coming to that basin, and of course Northside saw the same. And so when you see these little jumps for the peak, they're usually correlated to a rainstorm. Or if we're testing a pump station that goes online, we'll see a little bit of jump. Not to that magnitude, but we'll see a jump as well.
What does I&I mean?
Infiltration,
Intrusion.
infiltration inflow. Rain.
It's cracks in the pipe.
Yeah.
Years ago, it was, when Southside Treatment Plant was in dire straits, there was some work done, relining, that added years of life to that plant. Are we back there?
Yes. So I don't think we were back to being able to add life to the plant. But we do have 2 basins that are on our CIP. We have Mott's Creek and Bernard's Creek that are going to be rolling out to also look at that gravity basin to see if we can capture some of that I&I as well. But we're always evaluating our wet water model. We're about 2 months away, is that right, Gary? To see that, and that data should show us the basins that have the most I&I to where we can focus in on where to go and attack to be able to take care of that, so where that drops our average daily on a common day and not require us to see these peaks in this demand.
So let me kind of summarize. Infiltration is water that gets in there during a rain event. That's typically in manholes, in areas that are inundated, that are normally dry. Infiltration is typically groundwater, and we can address both through remediation, through slip lining or pipelining, for example, rehab. But rehab is a continuous activity. If you rehab one section of pipe, another section is still deteriorating, and the cracks get bigger, and the water comes in more frequently in these other sections. So it's a continuous process. Our engineering team brought to me actually less than the last 2 weeks this conversation of, all right, we need to look at our infiltration and inflow based off of the data that's rolling in, and have a conversation about projects that need to roll forward or where we'll be placing some of those projects. But it's not unusual for anybody in the state to see high flows during a tropical storm event. Almost every utility in the state had some problem during Debbie.
This data that we're looking at here is not related to Debbie.
No.
Correct. Yeah, it was outside that window. Ken, is all I&I directly related to gravity flow areas as opposed to force mains?
I would say yes, because force mains are obviously they're pressurized pipe.
Yeah.
So we would see outflow from a leaking force main.
Yeah, as opposed to inflow, yeah. Yeah.
And we've actually seen that
Yeah,
in Bayshore.
yeah, that's, I get
Treating
that.
it all.
So by looking data-wise at our older portions of our system, those that are more gravity, as opposed to force main, couldn't we predict where we're going to see that I&I?
Well, remind
Yes.
me if I'm wrong, the answer is yes, and I think we have 950 plus miles of gravity force mains, is that right, or is it 750?
Say it's about 1,000.
About 1,000?
In accordance with the strategic plan that the board laid out,
Yeah.
Can I join you, Craig?
Sure.
All right. In accordance with the board's strategic plan, engineering has developed a wet weather model. We're 2 months from rolling it out. That model is calibrated based on leaving flow monitors in the system for a prolonged period of time to measure the response in the system along with the amount of rainfall that came into the system. So that gives us a hydraulic model of our entire system that lets us analyze and predict where I&I would typically happen. We're planning for the October Long-Range Planning Committee a rollout on that model and a root cause analysis of all the SSOs that occurred in Debbie. We've got our team looking at that. We're going to pull that together, and also some recommendations for the next year's CIP to help us discuss and understand where we're planning on investing for additional rehabilitation. There's some concerns downtown that's a death by 1,000 cuts. We have a lot of clay pipe down there, and in the older clay pipe, they use something called hammer taps. Now, a hammer tap is basically where you go to a clay pipe and you hit it with a hammer and you stick the tap in. So that leaves a lot of room for both water and sand to flow in, and that's a major problem with our system. But you know, we can only repair it incrementally. We couldn't afford to just go in there and fix the whole thing, but we're working, nibbling away at that a little bit at a time.
Thank you, Gary. And thank you, Madam Chair, for your patience and the boards. I think that was the longest key indicator report ever. But I certainly learned a lot, and thank you.
Okay. So I briefly want to follow up with a walk-in item. We are following very closely some events at the North Carolina Environmental Management Commission that focus on 3 areas of concern for the board and its strategic plan. The first area of concern is interbasin transfers. There is a pending interbasin transfer of which we are opposing that we expect within the next month or 2 or 3 to be in front of EMC committees to be reviewed. We also have some concerns around pending rules around 1,4-dioxane. We have a long history of trying to reduce that contaminant and the amount of it that comes to us from upstream discharges, and that's in front of the EMC. And then finally, the EMC is looking at surface water and groundwater quality rules for PFAS, again, to try to reduce the amount of PFAS that is coming downstream. Because the EMC meetings conflict with this meeting, staff is asking that we move the September meeting from Wednesday the 11th to Tuesday the 12th. Tuesday the 10th. And we're asking that we move the November meeting from Wednesday the 13th to Tuesday the 12th. And then our future, our adopted schedule next year, we'll work closely with that, and we'll try to avoid any conflicts. I believe that it's very important for either myself or Nicolette or both to be at the EMC meetings to try to forward our interest in these issues.
Agreed.
Does that need action?
No, that doesn't need action.
We did adopt our calendar.
Yes, we have a calendar.
It does for the calendar.
Yeah.
So is that the September 11th would be September 12th?
No, so it'd be Tuesday.
Tuesday the 10th.
Tuesday the
Or
10th.
Tuesday on the 10th?
And then November the 12th is what we would request. And our scan suggests that there are no conflicts with city or county meetings at that time.
Yeah.
Can I be a singular motion?
It can't be motions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those say in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
The IBT, is that concerning not putting water back in the?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
We want them to put the water back in.
Right. So we have a lot of work in front of us at the EMC over the next year. Then the last thing that I would mention is very quickly, three points that I find interesting. One is Lord Ellison couldn't join us today because he is testifying in Washington on Capitol Hill with congressional staff on behalf of CFPUA and the industry for cybersecurity. And I want to thank the city for their support of cybersecurity legislation. I have laid in front of you kind of a card that we hand out to all of our supervisors. This is just a reminder that we give every supervisor. We ask them to keep this with them that talks about their job responsibilities as supervisors. And on the back side is our responsibilities as a leadership team to them. And then finally, you might have noticed that we would like you, we see that a lot of us like to have pins on our suits. When we have suits, I see that the city and the county have recognition pins. We welcome you to take these and use those to represent us when you're in the field or at a event. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Ken, Executive Director?
Yeah, I ask one question. I'm sorry, we didn't, on the KPIs, on the, I didn't get a chance after Rob. Just on the days cash on hand and the debt service coverage, I noticed they were both trending down. My question was really just forecasting. I mean, we're looking at a wet hurricane season, and we already talked about disconnects. Where are we, I guess are we prepared and forecasting for this season and this fiscal year? Where are we headed?
Let's ask our CFO and Deputy Executive Director, John McLean, to give his thoughts on trends for those two metrics. John?
Sure. I think what you're seeing this year is a combination of a couple of things. For one, on the revenue side, and you're familiar with the formula for debt service coverage, right? You know, we're seeing revenues from SDCs from this kind of downward trend in new growth that we were just talking about. So those are the fees that we charge to new customers once they join the system. Those are down lower than forecasted. And then the other thing too is in terms of our retail rates, those are a little bit below where we forecasted. That's based on a couple of things. That's the number of customers and then the usage per customer. So we estimate those every year to set our rates based on our expenditures. And we kind of missed the mark a little bit this year. So on the other side, in terms of the expenditures, we obviously can't spend more than budget, but we're spending very, very closely to 100%, you know, for this fiscal year, and we're almost, well, the fiscal year's, I guess, done, but we're still closing it out. So I think what you've seen is very tight expenditures, lower revenues, and so what you see is that numerator for your net revenues is a little bit lower than where we forecasted it to be. We still are, in terms of the debt service coverage, within our kind of allowable bands. We like to achieve between 1.6 and 1.8. I think it was 1.74. So yes, it's trended downwards, but I think what you'll see you know, with this new fiscal year, assuming, you know, that we are a little bit more on point with our updated revenue, you know, drivers and projections, is that'll come back up to that 1.8 level. Those same drivers are kind of what's driving the days cash on hand. I will say to some extent, and this is to Wes's point, talking about DEQ being a little slower than they have been in the past. We have a lot of our capital projects, high-level capital projects, you know, very expensive, you know, projects that are grant funded, either through state revolving loans or ARPA grants that are administered by that department. We're seeing turnaround times for those reimbursement requests that are sometimes, you know, $6 to $7 million take, you know, 2 to 3 months longer than they normally would. So there's some of that too from a pure cash flow standpoint, and that's one of the reasons why we have such a high cash balance, right? Like a minimum cash balance. We like to maintain no less than $50 million. And it's for that very reason.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
All right, I think that's it for executive director's report. Moving on to committee reports. The executive committee met Monday of this week. The agenda was already published for this committee for our board meeting, so the minutes from the executive committee meeting are not in the packet. They'll be included in next month's. But the executive committee has 2 personnel matters for closed session discussion, so we'll get to those later. So moving on to long-range planning committee.
Long-range planning met 7:25. We had 2 presentations, 2 informational items. One was a progress report on the easement acquisition team, and the other one was a project update on the extension of water mains to PFAS contaminated wells, and those are in the packet.
Madam Chair, I just have one question on the
Yes.
strategic plan update.
Okay.
If I may. Sorry to take us back. There was, page 102, a CFPUA-wide survey by the IEB third-party partner. It says by September, they aim to receive and analyze the survey results to guide our priorities and actions to foster an inclusive and equitable workplace. I just wonder if the board will have an opportunity to review those submissions, if that's in works.
Absolutely. And the survey closes tomorrow. If I recall correctly from our report yesterday, we're over 50% in terms of survey answers from staff, if I recall correctly. I'm seeing nodding heads.
There'll be a reminder throughout the day.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to finance committee.
Yeah, Finance Committee met August 5th. The minutes are in the packet. With that, we'll have a presentation of our monthly financials.
Good. We just went over a little bit of this a few seconds ago, but want to start with the fund balance by category as of June 30th. I want to say first that this is not final. We are still closing the year, and when we put this together 2 weeks ago, we weren't as close as we are today. So I expect the unassigned fund balance to change. As you can see, it's at $49.7 million. We did make some up, as you can see. We were a little bit lower. I think this is going to go down some more based on invoices that still had to be paid. And we'll come back next month with another update of where we sit. And you can see we're still at the deficit, but as we've been saying, we hope to make that up in FY25. If we don't, we can always do something in FY26 to get us back up to that target of $50 million. We did not have a meeting last month, so we did not present the June 30 revenue numbers. As you can see, we're still in the unfavorable for total dollars, and then as well as the average monthly usage per ERU and for both water and sewer. And these are final numbers. We don't expect these to change. And then, as we were saying about the SDCs several times this meeting, they are below where we were projecting, which is kind of leading to that deficit that we're seeing. So the higher expenditures, the lower revenues, we're showing the deficit. And I can quickly kind of talk about this. The actual versus budget for the year, again, not final, getting closer, but you can see we're at 98.22% for actual versus budget, which is very close. A lot closer than we were this time last year at 95.43.
So if I might speak to the revenue aspects. As we mentioned before, there's kind of 3 drivers there. One is we're seeing fewer system development charges. That's associated, we think, with either a change in the mix of residential, commercial, and multifamily, and or a decline in the number, probably both. And we're also seeing we're seeing less volumetric use than we anticipated. Some of that also may be a change in the mix. As mentioned before, there's more irrigation use from 100 units that are single family than there would be from 100 multifamily unit. The other side of that is we need to go look at our large meters. The very first thing you do when you see a decline in revenue is you scan your large meters and see how accurate they are. We've implemented our first large meter testing program. Where are we at on that contract?
Contract signed, right? Or I guess it's with the contractor for signature, but yeah, we've signed it.
So we have budgeted to replace any large meters that we find that are both beyond the age of correction and need correction. We've budgeted and we have a contract with a contractor to go out and look at these large meters to see if some of them need to be adjusted. Some meters can be adjusted. Some simply have to be replaced. That's the first place you look to make sure if we're losing revenue that we gather it back. And then if we find a few large meters that have actually been reading slow, we will then have to come back and have a conversation about, do we consider back billing based on that accuracy? We don't have a recommendation on that. We recognize how divisive that is. But let's just see what the study finds. So we're taking proactive steps to try to address what we see as declining revenues. And
historically, all meters tend to wind down. I mean, that's fact of life.
Yep.
But,
Yep.
and this is not the time to discuss the other, but I would never be in favor of going back and back building. That's not their fault.
Yeah. Typically, that is not something that we've ever done as a policy. From the fiduciary standpoint, as your executive director, I have to put it on the table for consideration.
Ken, is there any thought about, the push, and I know this is a long-term thing, to go to more low-flow or appliances, residential-wise, that use less water, up to and including hot water heaters? There's a shift we go to, electric hot water heaters. Or is that just too small of amount to move the needle?
Actually, in-home usage, the entire nation is seeing a decline in gallon per capita day. And all the new construction will have a lower gallon per capita day than the construction even a year ago. Mm-hmm. So we have to plan on and be aware of that the new stock will use less per capita than the old stock.
So it sounds like our model, long-term, we have a problem with that, of how we make our money. If we are considering, or if we're using volumetric, there's a change in it. There's a change in the market. It's not totally different than what we're seeing with electric vehicles, that the old way of getting gas tax by using gas is shifting. We're seeing that in our business as well. And maybe this is something for long-range planning or some kind of high thinking. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a way to adjust our financial model we're stuck with the same infrastructure. We still have to deliver water, and we have the same costs, or actually our costs continue to go up. So to me, it's a matter of fairness, to our clients. Meanwhile, our revenue is going down.
I would say it's probably too early to tell in terms of trends and whether it really impacts our model. But it's a conversation that we have on a regular basis. And we'll certainly, as we go into the next year's budget, we will be looking very, very closely at trends and hard data to see if we have the right variables and the right assumptions going forward.
Thank you.
And also keep in mind, that delays future capacity increases. So there's a balance.
Yeah. Oh.
So as we gain customers, but they lose us, we're still kind of somewhat flat.
Because we take a double hit, not only in volumetric, but also in SDCs overall. So.
Well, you're gonna take a hit because the home builders got SDCs reduced because of the fact that houses are more efficient.
Yeah.
And so you don't know whether we're gonna have a spike in SDCs in the coming years, but your use per house is gonna go down. But but you're gonna have a whole lot of new infrastructure to pay for the old infrastructure.
Yeah, so
Which
those
is
costs will
costing
continue
$20
to,
million a year.
yeah.
Well, and not to belabor the point, but if I remember correctly, there's a point, because of our carbon exchange that we are required to do, there's a point at which the higher volumes start to cost more money. Is that an accurate way? I feel like, John, we talked about this at one point in sustainability. Because of our new filtration system, those top gallons actually start to cost more than the intermediate gallons, or is that not really? You know what I'm talking about?
I think in general, I mean, we have to size our infrastructure and our plants and our capacity to peaks.
Right.
Right? So it's really the high usage customers that are driving those capacity upgrades. And so, when we were talking about rate structure, that's the kind of the philosophical basis behind moving to a tiered rate structure, is because it's a more, I guess, a fairer way to ensure that we are charging customers what it costs us to serve them. And so it's that difference in allocating capital costs for capacity upgrades, right? To those higher using customers that we were talking about.
All right, I think that's it for finance, Wes.
Yeah, that concludes finance, thank you.
Moving on to sustainability.
Yep, sustainability met this past month for the first time in a while, and we reviewed our greenhouse gas inventories. As the full board remember, our goal is to reduce emissions by 43% over our 2019 emissions by 2030, which is sort of a ballpark industry standard. Beth is going to just do a very short presentation on what we talked about. I'll also just throw out, when we're talking about bottom line, protecting our bottom line growth, protecting our ratepayers, you can add growth, but you can also add savings and reduce costs to protect your bottom line. So that's part of this equation as we look at efficiencies.
Yep. Well, thank you. And you're exactly right. I want to give a shout out to Sydney Valiant. She did an excellent greenhouse gas emissions presentation at our Sustainability Committee last month. It was a great presentation. And I know you guys are sitting there looking at that packet and saying, is she really going to go through this presentation? We're not. What we're going to do, though, is focus on some of the questions that were asked during the committee, which was the likelihood of us meeting that 43% goal. And if we did all of the things that we have planned, do we feel like we're going to meet that goal? So that's what I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of an update on. Okay, let's see. Do I point this somewhere else? Or?
You'll need to go to.
Oh. This is true.
Starts on show.
So these slides did not make it to our packets, did they?
No.
Okay.
No, they're just the ones that we put
Summary.
together to kind of give you a summary of where we're going, like our path forward. It's kind of the forecast of all of the things we talked about at the committee and where we project being if we take into consideration all of this, so, all of the things that we have planned. So as a reminder, and Jessica mentioned it, that our goal is based on that the committee set last year is to achieve a 43% reduction in greenhouse gas emission measured in metric tons of CO2 equivalents per million gallon of wastewater treated by 2030. And that's compared to the 2019 baseline year that was developed several years ago. So, and I think in your packet, if you look at slide 29 on that presentation, you can see our 2019 to 2023, we're like about right at 20% reduction, so almost halfway there. But based on discussion in the committee, as I said, it was centered around the path forward and the likelihood of us achieving the overall goal. So what we wanted to do is provide a projection based on the discussed and planned projects as we move forward. So this first graph that you see here is what it represents is the total metric tons of CO2 equivalents in 2019, which is the first year you see here, where we are in 2023, and then it's followed by the emissions estimates, increases and reductions of the known projects that we have out there, or known projects that we are at least discussing, some of which may move forward, some of which may not, but some we know. I mean, and one of the things that we did include in here, I want you to note the red bar here. That red bar, we all know the elephant in the room is Southside sitting out there. So what we did is we took Northside's emissions, and because we know that we are designing Southside to meet the same like treatment type processes and things that Northside currently has. However, it's being designed with 14 years of newer technologies and efficiencies and that kind of thing. So there's efficiencies we should see, as well as it's being planned with sustainability and operational efficiencies as one of the goals in designing that project. So what that 2684 represents is the difference between the south side emissions and the north side emissions being added back in. It's almost like we're double counting north side. So as a worst case scenario, because we're anticipating some less reductions than what north side currently has because of the newer technologies. So we added that in, so you see that jump way up. This is a waterfall graph. So, and then as you see the other projects that we are talking about in the inventory that we're taking into account, Duke Power, they have set a goal of 70% reduction by cleaning up their grid by 2030. Now, we know we do not have control over Duke Power, but that does take up about 19% of us reaching our goal, and hopefully they reach their goal. If not, we still have other projects and things that we can do. But we didn't go right not putting in Southside. We also have to take into consideration what Duke has planned. So we included both of those. And then the others are projects such as a solar array. The 47-acre carbon seek is not a project. That is that's land that we manage, that we have worked with an intern over at UNCW to get a calculation of the amount of emissions carbon that is sunk on that property. So we take into account that as well as some I&I projects, and y'all really teed this one up well for me in your previous discussions, because this I&I project, and I think Gary had done a presentation several months back talking about the greenhouse gas emission savings on your I&I reductions. And what we estimated, because we have ongoing I&I, is a similar reduction each year on the various projects that are going in. So you'll see that. So these are your projects. You have the solar array, the carbon sink, the I&I projects, and LED projects that are out there. Now that solar array is a project that's been somewhat designed, working with a solar company, but it's not something that is funded yet. It's not finalized, but it's been in discussion. So it's not something that will move forward without some additional funding, as the board had directed us to projects such as that were beyond our core mission scope, to look for grant funding and things like that to fund those type of projects. So we're continuing to do that, and we're going to look for opportunities there. So, so I say those next four bars, and then if you total that all up, you get to a total reduction of down to 12,372. Now that is total, and that represents a 38% reduction. Now that's not our 43. However, if you get to the next slide here, our goal's not calculated based on total metric tons of CO2 equivalents. Our goal is calculated on the metric tons of CO2 equivalents per million gallons treated. So when you go back in and you add that calculation based on the flow, we actually are projected with just the projects we've been talking about. That is, if Duke hits their goal. However, we, even with Southside added in there, we are projected to meet that goal. And realistically, we are projected to actually exceed that goal by about 0.23%, or 0.23 metric tons per million gallons a day. I will say a couple caveats in this. We did not increase the flow volume, so the denominator in that calculation stayed stagnant, which we all know, or at least we hope, is not realistic. We will have additional flow in the coming years. So we did not take that into account. We left it with the same flow calculation that we have right now, but we did add in all of the projects. So with that additional flow, that number, if all these other things come to fruition, that number will actually even go lower if our calculations and estimates working with engineering and what we've been doing come to fruition and they're accurate. So go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you just provide a little clarification on what the 47-acre carbon sink is? You said it's not a project.
It's not. We have purchased land that's 47 acres up in our well development field area.
Okay.
And it's eventually there's going to be wells out there. Not all of that land is going to be taken up by wells, but some of it will be. But until that land gets, we use part of it for that. The amount of carbon that is sunk in that area is based on the biodiversity of the trees as well as their age and the type of tree that they are, and we've done an inventory of that.
We get carbon credit effectively for that
It's
as a
kind of an
covered
offset
land play
kind of
until
thing.
we create wells out of that land.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
That was the clarification. Thank you for picking that up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as I said, I mean, it's looking really good. I will say I was not having run the numbers with Southside in there. I was a little fearful of what we were going to see, but it looks really good. But one thing I also want to note is that no matter, even if Duke does not reach their goal, we are constantly looking for optimizations, efficiencies, and in all of our projects, we're including sustainability type aspects. We are looking for the most efficient and effective plans for the way we're treating. And that's not only an environmentally and an emissions type sustainability project, that's also a fiscally responsible project. So, so we as an organization, we have been and we continue to plan and have a commitment to continual improvement on our processes, our practices, our delivery of services. So, and all of these continually incorporated into our projects moving forward, they do equate to that fiscal and environmental sustainability that we're looking for. So for the most part, for more efficient operation and piece of equipment, as we move forward, that typically equates to a less electrical usage, a less pumping possibly, and typically equates to less cost and less emissions. So given the forecast, and if Duke delivers on their plan, it's possible for CFPUA to reach our goal, and it's potentially possible even if they don't, if they just make progress towards it. And we can potentially even exceed our goal if we stay on track and continue to operate the way that we do, which is with that continual improvement commitment on all aspects, fiscally and environmentally. So,
I know Duke is a powerhouse, but are we having any conversations with Duke Power to let them know what they've got going on ultimately affects what we have going on?
With this type of aspect in emissions, we have not. But we constantly have communications with them about how they impact us from a standpoint of power supply and that kind of thing. But from an emission standpoint, we have not. We can, but we haven't. I think we're a small player in their world. They may not care, but we can reach out. So,
I think everybody's a small player in their world, but, I just want to know if you know, because you keep saying Duke Power, Duke, and it's almost like they're a renegade, but I just want to know if we are having communication with Duke to let them know that on the scale that we're looking for, they are a major player in what we have going on, and vice versa.
like I said, we have not, but we will be happy to do that, and we do have contacts with Duke Power. And that's not the group that's in their sustainability group, but I'm sure that Wilson can get us a contact for people that we can talk to.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much for that, Beth.
Yeah.
Good job, team. Oh, you
Madam
got
Chair,
something
just a
on?
quick,
Go ahead.
no,
you.
just a quick comment. I wanted to congratulate again Sydney, who is relatively new to our team, and the report she gave. I know we all have busy schedules, and this report that's in our packet is kind of dense. All I can say, it was the most comprehensive thing that I've ever sat through. It was long, there's no doubt about it, but boy, it put together, it was wonderful. And it was the encouragement of the Sustainability Committee that had Beth bring forward this kind of update that we've had. Those of you who were on the board remember how much discussion was around trying to set this goal, which was done 2 years, maybe 2.5 years ago. And at that time, it was a little bit like throwing a dart at the board saying, wow, could we ever really achieve a 43% reduction in our footprint? And here we are. I mean, look at this, we're still 6 years away from the goal, which is 2030. And it looks like we're not only going to achieve it, we're going to go beyond that. I just think it's wonderful. This is one of the best achievements I have seen with this organization, and again, leaders within our industry. And we have the data to show it. I just want to say congratulations to Beth and her entire team, and to Ken and her entire team, and welcome aboard Sydney. I'm looking forward to her next presentation.
We are too.
Ditto.
Good, okay. Human Resources Committee, I think you met yesterday?
Yeah, the Human Resources Committee met August 13th, and we reviewed 2 informational items. We didn't have any action items. The employee benefits for calendar year 2025 was presented by Ms. McCoy, and the latest change in the benefits is the health insurance third-party administrator has changed from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Aetna. Also, the update on the leadership development initiatives, including a partnership with the Swain Center at UNCW and the rollout of a new learning management system. The minutes and the PowerPoints for further review is in your packet.
Actually, they're not.
They'll be in next month.
Too soon.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
sorry, since it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I apologize.
That's on me.
Yep. Any question for Human Resources? Okay. Last committee, Nomination Committee met. We met twice in July. Couldn't remember my dates. But the Nomination Committee is presenting a slate of officers as follows. Myself as chairman, Dean Hackney as vice chairman, Dr. Jessica Cannon as secretary, and Wes Corder as the treasurer. So we're presenting that slate of officers for a vote by the board. So if I can get a motion in a second, or if anybody has comments, questions.
Motion.
All right, motion by Hollis, second by Luke, thank you, Spring Court. All those in favor say aye. Sorry about that. Any opposed? Okay, so the slate of officers passes. Moving forward, I don't believe we have any old business to come before the board, correct? Okay, any other questions and answers, closing comments by anybody? All right, we're gonna take 5 minutes, and then we're gonna go into closed session for 2 personnel items.
So my rules, if we have a closed session, I go.